Welcome to Upticks. I'm Jake Falcon, the founder of Falcon Wealth Advisors and your host of Upticks. Today is episode 104, Election 2020 Prediction. Okay, welcome back to the show. Before we dive in, of course, I hope that all of you out there are staying safe and healthy. Horrible pandemic is certainly sweeping across the Midwest, and we know this will pass. We just don't know when. And certainly, hopefully, a vaccine comes out and it's effective, and people continue to social distance. And this too, like I said, should pass. Okay, so for today's topic, I wanted to talk about the election. We're within 3 months of the 2020 election, and more of my conversations with our clients have been all around the election. So whether you like Trump, whether you like Biden, whether you like Kanye West, doesn't really matter to me. What I'm going to do is talk about potential scenarios that could play out and what we're going to do about it, and kind of give you where we think things may be headed. But first, I wanted to read something here. I wanted to read a quote from one of the institutional research companies, Strategas, that we follow, because I found it very interesting, and it kind of spurred the reason for the topic of our show today. But what they did is they went back and they looked since 1928. They say the S&P 500 has predicted 87% of the U.S. presidential election winners and every presidential winner since 1984. Using a simple formula. If the S&P 500 is positive in the 3 months ahead of the election, the incumbent party has won. And if stocks are lower, the opposition party has won. And again, that's straight from Strategas. That's not research that we've done at Falcon Wealth Advisors. So it's interesting to look at. So what we'll be tracking as of basically August 3rd of 2020 up until November 3rd, if you see the S&P 500 up during those few months, at least since 1984, the incumbent, which would be Trump, could stand for re-election. Now, to me, this is somewhat of a coincidence, but it's pretty interesting that the data shows since 1928 that 87% of the time it has been accurate. So they argue that that's better than polls or anything else that you can follow. So I'll be looking at the S&P 500. I already do that anyways, obviously. So I'll be paying attention from August 3rd up until election day to see what we're doing. Okay, so let's talk about that. Well, what if the incumbent does get reelected? Well, for the Trump supporters out there, I'm sure they'll be dancing in the streets. And you know what? For what it's worth, having the incumbent reelected is typically a positive sign for the market. We already know what we're dealing with and what we've been dealing with the last 4 years, so we can expect much of the same. If any of you have met with me or have heard previous podcasts, you've heard me talk about uncertainty as the driver of market volatility. So if we already know what a president's agenda is, we're used to the way that they interact with the media and with other countries, then we can expect more of that for 4 years. And that typically will be, a decent thing to carry through with the market. I'm not saying good or bad. I'm just saying that normally things will continue to flow if we have the incumbent reelected, whether it's a Democrat or a Republican. If Biden overtakes Trump, it'll be very interesting to see what the Democrats do in the Senate. Because ultimately, if the Republicans keep control of the U.S. Senate, even if Biden wins, that doesn't mean there's going to be a lot of game-changing legislation out there. Simply, the Republicans will block anything that tries to get passed. Now, for many citizens, that can be frustrating, but I would argue that gridlock is good, at least for the markets and the economy. And the way to think about this is just imagine yourself running a business. And if you were worried about what the tax laws were going to be, labor laws, or anything that could potentially impact you both positively or negatively, you probably would be a little hesitant to deploy a lot of capital and expand and grow your company. You'd want to see what the rules were. And that's why the market and the economy, generally speaking, doesn't like game-changing legislation. So typically speaking, if the Republicans have complete control or the Democrats have complete control, it's typically not good for the market. You get a lot more volatility associated with that. So if Biden wins, I think the more important thing will be if the Democrats take over the Senate, because then you would have a sweep, right? So you have all the Democrats, both in the House, Senate, and in the White House, and that would bode for an interesting at least couple of years until terms on the Senate start getting propped back up. So those are two potential scenarios that definitely could play out. I think the three hottest topics are going to be COVID-19, which is a little unprecedented. That's going to be a hot debate topic of the election, of how is the president going to handle this, whether it's Trump or Biden. How are they going to get us through this? Another one would be racial inequality. That's been awful in America. I think that'll be another interesting topic to see how that's addressed. And then the third is China. We're continuing our quarrel with China, and I'm curious to see what Biden's proposal would be as far as interacting from a business standpoint with foreign countries, because we certainly know Trump's stance on it. So I know you tuned in to this podcast to get my prediction. I'm not a betting man really, but if I had to, I'd probably say, just from what I gather, I think the Trump supporters are going to be hard to flip, and I would lean towards Trump getting reelected, but I could be completely wrong. As of the recording of this podcast, Biden has not picked his vice president. I think that'll be very important. As of the airing of this, that may be already announced, and maybe I can do another podcast based on that topic alone. But I think that'll be very important to Biden's run, is picking a solid VP candidate to go with him on his journey. So, again, I think right now, even though the polls may say otherwise, and again, I'm not saying I'm for Trump or Biden, I'm saying I think that's what's going to happen. I think Trump could win and the Democrats could take the Senate. And I don't think that necessarily would be a bad thing, by the way. I think if we had a Republican in the White House and both the House and the Senate were controlled by Democrats, again, I'm a fan of gridlock. So I think gridlock would be a good thing as far as the markets and the economy are concerned. So with that, we'll be paying very close attention to the S&P 500 and seeing how that plays out and what happens from there. I'll be paying close attention, obviously to COVID and the number of people impacted by that. And then China, obviously also, that's always continuing to be on our radar as that heats up. So with that, that's all the time that I have for you today. I hope that all of you are staying safe and healthy. If you're listening to this on your favorite podcast platform, thank you so much. A thumbs up would be greatly appreciated. If you're tuning in on YouTube, thank you so much for watching. Our subscriber count continues to grow. And a thumbs up on there would be much appreciated as well. I'm out there on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. So certainly feel free to send me a friend request and connect so that you don't miss any of our content. As far as fun events, I continue to play golf. I'm going to go get a golf lesson right after this day. I've got my Falcon, you can kind of see it, my Falcon Wealth Advisors polo on. So I'm still technically working, but I'm going to get a golf lesson today, spend some time with my wife, Rachel, and our favorite pooch, Einstein. It's been much of the same in the Falcon household. We've done some landscaping work, which has been really cool. Got some drainage figured out in my backyard, and our up front has been mulched and weeded, which is nice. And we're looking at maybe planting some trees in the backyard or replacing some at least. So that's kind of what's next on the agenda for us. I did start watching Yellowstone. Pretty awesome. I'm not quite through the first episode. Rachel and I didn't look at the time. That first episode's like an hour and a half, which we weren't expecting that. So we cut it a little short. Pretty good show though. A little graphic, but it's pretty interesting so far. So I'll probably try to tune into that if I can get Rachel to keep watching with me. Like I said, hope all of you are staying safe and healthy, and we hope you have a great week.